Hello everyone, today I'm showing you an alternative method to the burrito roll method to sew the armholes. So I've already done the neckline part. So first you sew the shoulders together, you stitch the shoulders, both of the lining, or in my case the facing, and of the dress. And then you sew the dress and the facing together around the neckline. Right parts together, and then we come to this step here. So this is the alternative. This is, I think this is the best when you have very narrow shoulder, like here I have a couple of centimeters, which will be less than 1 inch in US measures, even less. So with very narrow shoulders we just do this. Look, here we have the facing and the dress. You just take the two edges, open, and then you place one on the other on the right side. So I'll do this again. You can have also the on the other side the dress, not the facing or the lining. It's the same. So take both edges on the armhole, see, like this, and just put them together, right sides touching. You put here a pin, and then you start slowly sewing, stitching, and I will show you now with my sewing machine how to do that. Okay, let's do this again. Here's the facing or the lining, and here is the dress. Look, open and just put them together, the edges. See? Right sides touching. Just put a pin here. It's easier to start. And then you go under your sewing machine. The trick is not to pull everything out like with the burrito roll. You just do it 1 centimeter at a time. So we started. Now we go on. And while we are doing it, while we are stitching, we are starting to pull out the fabric. See this tunnel? Don't do this, don't try to pull out everything, because you won't be able to, especially with such a narrow shoulder stitching. So just we go on. Since again we have this very narrow shoulder, we just want to get to the shoulder seams. Then we are going to stop and continue on the other side. So at this point I have here the shoulder seams. Okay, now I'm going to put together two shoulder seams to have them match. I will go on for a little bit further than the shoulder, maybe 1/2 inch, which is more or less 1.5 centimeters. Or maybe if you cannot, just stop just right after. You see here it's starting to be very narrow, very hard to pull out the fabric, and it really depends on the type of fabric that you're using. So here I'm going to backstitch and stop. Here I'm exactly a little bit under the shoulder seam. Now with the pinking shears, or just clipping away half the margin and making little triangles with your shears, just this curve here, because this curve here is going to make problems when we turn on the right side. So just like this. Be very careful not to cut the shoulder seams, because then you will undo your back stitching you did on the shoulders. Okay, now turn on the right side. Just turn. See? We have our armholes stitched, And now do the other side. Here we did the back side, the front, now we're doing the back side. Okay, so do this again and stitch, put a pin and stitch all around until you get to the back stitch you did right under the shoulder stitching. Okay. So we're doing the same like we did on the other side, just closing the other side. Now it's going to be very narrow again, but it's doable. Just need to have a little patience. Okay, this tunnel here. Okay, when you get here, just pull out. I see here the back stitch I did, but I just want a little bit fabric to more, so it's easier to close the stitching and not go some further on. Okay, so here I had the back stitching. Now I will close on the back stitching I did before. You see, it is a lot, it's not easy to do it, but I find it easier with narrow shoulders than with the burrito roll. Okay, turn on the right side, and here we are. Look how narrow this is. Can it be more smaller? I don't think so. So here we go. Now we have to do my advice, as with the neckline, before you go to iron press, just keeping the sewing allowance, the bulk, under the facing or the lining, just with your sewing machine, top stitch here, just a little bit over on the other side, on the facing. This will keep the lining inside and it will not pop out. Look, for example, here, but only on the facing and taking the bulk of the sewing allowance. So I have a special foot here for my industrial sewing machine, but if you don't, you just need to be to go as careful as you can near the edge, but on the facing. And of course, having such a narrow shoulder, we cannot finish all around, so we'll just go as much as we can. It will help a lot to keep the facing inside the dress, not popping out when we move or our girls move. Okay, so here I see I cannot go further, so I will just back stitch and do it on the other side too. So here it is, the little top stitching I did only on the facing. You see, nothing on the right side, only on the facing, and taking with the stitching also the bulk of the sewing allowance. This will keep the facing inside. So here we are. This is the alternative method to the classic burrito roll method. Please let me know in the comments if you find it easier or harder than the burrito roll. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.